I've had a recent fixation. Beanie Babies. These things are soft, small, and portable, and they're not that difficult to find for cheap in thrift stores. Small, soft things like these are a wonderful anxiety aid. And since I was 16, I've almost always had one of these in my bag. This goes without saying that I am a very anxious person. But recently, I've stumbled upon these. Beanie Mania Guidebook by Becky's Phillips and Estenssoro, first edition published in August of 1998, and the September 1999 copy of the serialized magazine from the same pair of women. These two are rather insightful for different reasons. Phillips and Estenssoro had an authoritative history on different generations of ear and tush tags well before the ubiquity of the internet. You could easily check a copy out from the library, or pick one up off a newsstand to become an amateur Beanie Baby authority. The other half of it was a speculative value based on what really feels like a vibe check. Like, here's a few. Smooches and Legs the Frogs, Inches the Worm, Bongo the Monkey, Bones the Bloodhound, Magic the Dragon, Dobie the Doberman, and Claude the Crab. Of these 8 weighted stuffed animals, take a guess which one of these is the most valuable. They all have different price points according to these nearly 30-year-old guides, but unless you get an Inches or a Smooches with details made out of felt or an actually rare misprint, you're not getting much money by reselling these. I find it odd, since these are small plushies of real and fictional animals, but with bastardized taxonomies. Thankfully, hindsight is 2020, so we can look back at all the Beanie Mania of the 90s and the aughts and realize just how ridiculous it all was. Nowadays, their values are less based on random factors, and more on if beta designs made it into the wild, what pellets are used to fill them up, regional exclusives, and especially generation. There is still some that can go for a couple $100, but you're going to be disappointed if you're searching only for resale value out of lots. Speaking of which, of the 8 here, the most valuable one is Claude the Crab. His name is printed in all caps on his 5th gen tag, which triples his value. But your average listing on eBay only nets you about $15 or so. So most Beanie Babies are going to be worthless financial gambles, a net loss. I've joked how a lot of these were like NFTs. Non-fungible tokens, essentially a one-of-a-kind digital receipt that proves ownership of a digital item tied to a cryptocurrency. I was an unwilling owner of several when Reddit foisted them upon me, and I threw them in the trash when I deleted my old account, and nothing of value was lost. NFTs are often used just to scam gullible people out of their money, like Haley Welch's Hawk Tuah coin, a quintessential rug pull according to CoffeeZilla. I don't need to relitigate that, but there's something just a bit more relevant here, something quite a bit more insidious. Just like with trying to get in on the wealth of a new cryptocurrency, or purchasing tons of lots of Beanie Babies looking erroneously for specific valuable features, it's gambling! This video has been brought to you in part by the Players Alliance, where we're taking action to fight back against corporate greed in the video games industry. And if you want to hear what I have to say but you'd rather read it instead, a link to my Patreon is in the description below. There, you'll find this whole video in a written column form along with images, direct links to sources, and more. Anyways, back to the video. I started making content again in 2025. My first video was about an old webpage I loved called If Programming Languages Were Vehicles by Ellen Ruskin. The second video was my own Confessions of a Gacha Addict. Uploaded 30 January 2025, I started the year talking about my own personal spending addiction problems in Honkai Star Rail, Genshin Impact, and Zenless Zone Zero. All 3 games are what you'd call gacha games, whose primary gameplay loop is supplemented by a random draw of a virtual item, usually an anime character, to strengthen your team in order to play the game. I'm unearthing an old side account on Honkai Star Rail to provide an example. I've never played on it, nor have I spent money. This will remain a free-to-play stell. I promise you, I'm being incredibly cautious. The flashing effects of the gacha system are about the same as what you'll see in a casino. Bright lights, upbeat music with a hint of whimsy, and a strong presentation that'll strengthen positive conditioning every time you throw tickets at your target banner. These effects will always play, even if you don't pull what you're after, or if you lose your 50-50. It's using the addictive effects of a digital slot machine to drive you to spend real money to pull the characters and weapons you want, or let's face it, if you want your characters at peak performance, need. All this is directly attached to a very easy JRPG that leaves a lot to be desired. It's a lightweight story with simple gameplay and even simpler puzzles, and easy achievements. Your only mechanical goal is to get more Stellar Jade to spend on banners. Once you run out, what are you going to do? Sit around, wait for more? The perfect unit for your specific team's on the banner right now. A vulnerable person you know just might pull out their credit card to spend just $5 on the daily pass, maybe $10 on the battle pass. They just want to support the developers, you know? But the floodgates open from there. I cannot stress this enough. This is an extremely cynical, predatory way to get you to spend more money on games similar to premium titles. For $20 US, you could easily replace Star Rail and Genshin with Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth and Immortals Phoenix Rising and have more money left over to go buy some snacks. And you'd have a hefty couple of games to play. That same $20 can't get you all of 20 pulls on any given banner. That doesn't offer anything, aside from having poured unnecessary money into an incredibly hollow experience. Cognisphere isn't the only company doing this by a long stretch of the imagination, but they're throwing it all out there. And they got fined $20 million by the US Federal Trade Commission for mishandling children's data and pushing the slot machine onto them. Though that's a drop in the bucket since they make so much money that they're powering their servers with their own private nuclear reactor. Aniplex and Kuro Games are also big industry players, with Fate Grand Order and Wuthering Waves under their respective belts. And there's even more. Cognisphere has a new game called Nexus Anima, which purports to be the 5th ongoing title across the Honkai series. Netmarble made a Genshin ripoff of Seven Deadly Sins subtitled Origin, and Arknights Enfield came out, stumbling into the foray with a complete and utter PayPal screw-up that made paying for your anime PNGs a gacha game itself. You, likely living in the United States of America, might listen to this and think you can avoid these so-called freemium titles that predate upon you. I hate to say it, but you're just as vulnerable with Western titles. So many sports titles like EAFC or 2K Basketball have glorified casinos attached to their $70 games, and you get a chance to draw your favorite players to create your virtual dream team. Like, imagine if you could have a team of 7 reserve and 11 active Cristiano Ronaldos on your soccer team, where 10 reserve and 5 active LeBron Jameses on your basketball team. Though I don't think that's possible in the most literal sense, it's as predatory as drawing on a banner in Star Rail.
But Frogs, you're not buying the FC packs. You're not buying the 2K coins. And you're not buying the tickets in Star Rail.
This is true. In Star Rail, you buy a currency that you need to convert into a currency that you then convert into another currency. Spend cash for Oniric shards, exchange those at a 1-to-1 conversion rate with Stellar Jade, and then spend 160 of them to buy a ticket to pull on the banner. You are correct, oh dissenting voice mine. But these artificial levels of separation are designed to skew making the connection that you just spent $100 on this free game, or to push you to purchase cosmetics that cost more than the games that they're based on. And when you remove that single rock from the river, it becomes painfully clear that nothing was damming the flow. On November 3rd, 2009, Ohio voters arrived at their ballot boxes and found 3 constitutional referendums sent their way. The first was giving compensatory bonds to the veterans of the Persian Gulf, Afghanistan, and Iraq conflicts, passing with 72% of the vote. The second established the Ohio Livestock Care Standards Board, and that passed with about 64% of the vote. The third was a petition to allow 4 casinos to open in major cities, passing with just shy of 53% of the vote. Ohio's first casino opened on May 14, 2012 in Cuyahoga County, with the last opening in Hamilton County in 2013. However, these have been supplemented by 7 racetracks with video lottery terminals in 7 counties. Research from Milan Karna from 2022 would estimate that about 20% of Ohio's adult population can be categorized as anywhere from low risk to problem gamblers. I tried to contact him to ask about any projections or extrapolations he could assert from the past 4 years, but he's since left his former post at the Ohio Department of Behavioral Health. In spite of that setback, his report said the following.
The 2 game types with the most problem gamblers were online and gaming.
However, on the page before, he notes,
The 2 most common forms of gambling in the state were lottery and sports.
So pound for pound, the most problems came from video games and the internet, but they were lower on the scale of participation. That and casinos and racetracks aren't the worst. They're the 3rd worst, according to the chart where Karna said this. The worst individual category is the lottery, be it the pick 3, 4, or Mega Millions, or the scratchers you can get out of a vending machine. The 2nd worst, sports gambling, is a very recent historical development. On May 14, 2018, the Supreme Court of the United States decided Murphy v. National Collegiate Athletic Association. In a 6-2 decision with Justice Stephen Breyer simultaneously concurring and dissenting, SCOTUS agreed with the NCAA in interpreting the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act of 1992 as a violation of the 10th Amendment as commandeering of state law. In a nutshell, PASPA was interpreted to be a federal overreach that blocked states from choosing to allow sports gambling within their borders. Since then, 38 states have legalized forms of licensed in-person and online gambling, and the ways you can lose your hard-earned money have multiplied faster than rabbits can breed. If you're an adult, you can't go anywhere online without seeing an ad for DraftKings or FanDuel. Put simply, they're online platforms for betting on the outcome of sports games, and they're the 2 companies who pushed heavily towards the Supreme Court decision. Deliberate chance, like game of skill, have aided the push for licensing in 38 states for both in-person and online betting, driving this out into the open. This isn't helped by direct integration of those platforms into sports broadcasting. Now, with the lack of regulation on cryptocurrency, you can gamble on far more than just sports. Platforms like Kalshi and Polymarket allow you to bet on basically any outcome you can think possible. There's still plenty of sports betting, but there's way more than just wins and losses, and even more when you step out of the baseball diamond. On Kalshi, you have categories labeled sports, mentions, politics, and climate. You can bet on the daily high temperature in major cities, and you can bet on the results of the primary elections in Texas. You can bet on if announcers or politicians say specific words over the course of events, and you can even bet on your sports wins and losses. The big issue early on, though, was how artificially these events could be executed. Theoretically, you could take a couple friends and start a racket where you create a bet on a random event, say going to a high-traffic public building and throwing something off a high floor into an atrium. Create an artificial probability of hitting someone or landing on a floor and make it less predictable by making it a paper airplane or a balloon. But with some level of predictability, you can game the system to make sure you and your friends win every time. That's basically what happened with Dildogate, the event where people would throw comically colored dildos onto WNBA courts. In 2025, users on Polymarket would place bets on if these phallic objects would be thrown amidst live play. I'm not even sure how many of these were successfully tossed, but enough were pitched that the platform decided to lean into the bit and was subsequently raked over the coals. Cryptocurrency still has a huge misogyny problem. Though insidiously, this has allowed savvy people to enrich themselves by skirting various laws around insider trading. After all, platform policy only goes so far, and trading particularly in crypto renders participants untraceable. There's clearly something happening with Trump Coin allowing pretty open and shut bribes, especially if it's owned by the dynasty. This has been made worse by reports of participating in bets based on U.S. intelligence, like in the U.S. operation to kidnap Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, or the U.S.-Israeli bombing of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei of Iran. The truth is self-evident. This is war profiteering, gaining money while this rogue empire flails like a fucking toddler. It's in the interest of public policy that we should be aware of these happenings. People with friends and relatives in affected countries deserve to know if their families are okay, but not in this way. Not like this. where their deaths are used to strengthen a dollar amount. This has led to gamblers having the most instant access to consequential foreign intelligence, at least if you don't consider the Pentagon Pizza Monitor. But the future is looking bleaker than that. Far, far bleaker. It really doesn't help when the state of the world is the end result of a dead man, having pulled so many strings behind the scenes.
Good morning. We're now on the video record.
Though I don't think he needs any introduction in this current climate, I like my musings videos to remain fairly evergreen. So without further ado, pedophile, human trafficker, and sex offender Jeffrey Epstein had far more goings on in plain sight than simply his convictions. That's only what has been confirmed by the U.S. Department of Justice. Networking and trafficking included, Epstein was first and foremost a fixer. If you don't know what that is, a fixer is a person in a central role in criminal worlds to give out all sorts of things for a price. You can find fixer characters in Cyberpunk 2077 like Regina, El Padre, Wakako, or El Capitan, or TV characters like Raymond Reddington played by James Spader in The Blacklist. A good fixer is a resourceful person who can acquire anything for the right amount of money and favor. Epstein had a vast network. Politicians like Bill Clinton, talking heads like Noam Chomsky, and billionaires like Richard Branson and Elon Musk were among his ilk. Projects like Gmail World have tried to turn the smattering of files released by the Department of Justice into something human readable. It's not perfect, but with a little finagling, it's not hard to connect the dots. Additionally, Robert Evans' podcast Behind the Bastards has a 4-part series of episodes entitled How Jeffrey Epstein Helped Build the Modern World. I assure you, viewer, I do my own research, but it's nice to have a trusted voice doing the parasocial equivalent of telling me, you're not crazy. It was just that fucking bad. We can actually trace so much of the worldwide conservative populist movement directly to Epstein's post-conviction hegemony. The beginnings of the transgender genocide in his correspondence with the discredited Robert Trivers, and later hangouts with one J.K. Rowling for Harry Potter and the Cursed Child's premiere in London. A return to tribalism and sowing of division with Steve Bannon and Peter Thiel, allowing foreign propagandists to pave the way for conspiratorial anti-Western messaging, like the multi-channel network Tenet Media funding various fringe YouTubers through RT staffers Konstantin Kalishnikov and Elena Afanasieva. While I don't know if he was in the SVR or Mossad's pockets, it's kind of clear what his legacy has wrought. Something left kind of out in the open of all this was the genesis of predatory microtransactions in games. The two concerned parties in Epstein's network are Pavlos Holman and Bobby Kotick. Kotick is a name you might already know, a former oil magnate and the head honcho of the fatal misogynistic culture that dominated Activision Blizzard. Meanwhile, Holman was kind of an unknown to me. According to his website, Pavlos Holman describes himself as a hacker, inventor, and technology futurist. His projects include stuff for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin, both of whom also appear in the Epstein files. The chain of emails people are citing are from 2013. Holman's correspondence with Epstein includes an email dated May 2nd of that year. Here it is in full.
Play Medal of Honor or Call of Duty, and you will learn war history. Here's what I've been thinking. Video games are already great at teaching. If they don't assess your level and put an appropriate challenge right in front of you, the game fails. Challenge too hard, and you get frustrated and quit playing. Too easy, and the game is no fun. That is exactly what a good teacher or tutor would do. Fundamentally, the thing that works is a 1-to-1 student-teacher ratio. Even if you have a shitty teacher or tutor, you will learn a lot because that person gets to know you and challenges you at your level. That doesn't scale, but computers do. So we have to use computers to replace teachers, or at least augment them. Today's video games don't try to teach stuff we care about. Well, except for shooting bad guys. The best scheme I've come up with so far is to use X Prize or something like it to co-opt the existing video games industry. Give out a prize to the game that comes up with the best way of teaching kids anything from a normal school curriculum. Let them pick whatever they want to teach, any grade level, and just incorporate it into their product. It's the way to get the most brains and the most users for the least money. You want to skip convincing educators and parents about this stuff and just go straight for the kids. Imagine you were looking at a door in a video game. It has some squiggly symbols printed on it. Little munchkins walk up to the door and say, "Konnichiwa." The door opens and they are greeted by a hot princess with big tits and a thong. The door closes in your face. You are going to fucking learn and read and pronounce kanji. Unleash that on 5th grade boys, and then the next thing you know, you'll have an entire generation of bilingual kids speaking Japanese to each other behind the backs of their parents and teachers. Edutainment is for pussies. It doesn't work. Once kids catch on that you are trying to teach them something, they shut down. We have to keep the boobs and guns and profit. You see how much money video games are making these days? Fuck educational reform. We need educational subversion.
For one, ew. For two, Holman doesn't know what he's talking about at the slightest. Good edutainment exists. Why else would shows like Sesame Street have been around for over half a century? Or why so much of mine and so many others' childhoods on computers were so dominated by Living Books, Davidson, and the Learning Company titles? But that's another topic, and I really don't want to have to entertain children's media more in this section than I really have to. Epstein's email correspondence with Holman started around this time, and further emails indicate that they were likely communicating earlier by other means. But with Kotick, they met up multiple times, indicated by emails going back to 1991. Epstein appeared to bridge the communicative gap between the two, with a chain of emails the following day, May 3rd, 2013.
To me, X Prize is a good idea, but the key is real-world rewards. Learn to read, earn cell phone minutes, iPhone credits, virtual items in games.
I'm all for indoctrinating kids into an economy. You gotta love how his example for real-world rewards is virtual items in games.
This is being reported somewhat erroneously as Epstein is responsible for microtransactions in games. This isn't exactly true. At the very least, he's responsible for facilitating communication between parties who had very similar trains of thought. Microtransactions first appeared in Call of Duty starting in Black Ops 2 in 2012, a whole year before this first email exchange, but they certainly proliferated in Ghosts the next year. Epstein and Kotick appeared to have met amidst the former title's development in 2011, though no one really knows what went on at those meetings. The seed of this idea could have certainly been planted like so many others, letting this kudzu infest the garden. And I hate to say this, but I gotta give it to him. Epstein was one hell of a fixer. Well, we're in hell. What do we do now? I say we begin by understanding the landscape that we're in. Matthew Ball is a Canadian author and CEO of Apillion, a US-based angel investment group focused on the entertainment industries, film, television, and video games. He has 2 presentations on his website about the state of video gaming in calendar years 2025 and 26. This year's is in early access and reads less like a news report and more like an advisory document for investment portfolios. But there are still some useful nuggets of information for us layfolks. Excluding Roblox and China, video game spending is down, and Ball draws a line directly towards 7 items capturing people's attention. Where one might be spending their money on video games, they're instead spending time on social video platforms like TikTok, and their money on OnlyFans, AI assistants, cryptocurrencies, online sports betting, prediction markets, and iGaming, the term Ball uses to describe virtual casinos and slots. This includes a fun little quote.
While the traditional mobile casino genre long outpaced total mobile gaming growth, the genre is now shrinking as whale players depart for iCasinos.
A whale is someone who spends exorbitant amounts of money on video games, especially ones where spending that money would give them an advantage. Whales notwithstanding, if you were to overlay US spending on video games with sports betting, you would have a pretty clear image of where people's money and attention is going. If you're wondering what the answer to all this is from a consumer perspective, it's legislation, plain and simple. We didn't have all this here until SCOTUS opened the floodgates. So what happens when the flow gets capped? Well, keep your eyes on India. Their spending was about the same proportionately, at least until the Promotion and Regulation of Online Gaming Act of 2025 was introduced, passed by both houses of parliament, and then signed into law by President Draupadi Murmu on August 4th of that year. Reportedly, the immediate effect drove gambling offshore. Otherwise, it's too early to tell because it hasn't been a year between then and now. But I wouldn't be shocked if this led to spending on video games increasing over the next few years as long as this holds up. That is, if a premium title was in any way affordable. Games across the world are tied to the US dollar. Call of Duty Black Ops 2 on Steam costs about $60 US, 5,400 Indian rupees, $80 Canadian, 40 pounds sterling, 9,000 yen, 60 euro, or 330 Brazilian real. While inexact, this game is cheaper in Canada, Japan, and England, and more expensive in India, the European Union, and Brazil. When looking at that narrow view, that's pretty good, right? Nope! When examining prices in currencies that are not your own, you can't just look solely at the buying power at home. Wages vary from country to country and do not match your average wage in the United States. 15 US an hour would have you living not like a king, but far more modestly in Sao Paulo. There, the average hourly rate of a secondary school teacher is 24 real an hour, according to payscale.com. I'm not sure how accurate this is, but that's take home after payroll tax. This means it'd take about 14 hours of work to be able to purchase this game in Brazil, and gives you the buying power of about $4.50 an hour here. The increase in cost of premium titles drives this disparity further. If the cost of video games reflected the purchasing power of local currencies as it does the US, I'm willing to bet that more people will buy premium titles rather than sink endless hours and proportionate amounts of money into freemium games. It's a proven slippery slope into gambling addiction. The voices of the people affected by virtual casinos and video games are fresh in my mind. I'm one of them, after all. Since then, I've actively avoided those titles, excised them from my life, and I'm enjoying playing in my little niche again. I'm finding some cool stuff. But the diamonds in the rough are excessively drowned out by larger publishers that argue for your attention, vying for your hard-earned dollar. And then another, and then another, and then another. And then another, and then another. I've highlighted a lot of awful stuff in this video. I've put myself in addictive danger by going back to my Achilles heel, throwing caution into every step I take, and luckily, I haven't felt the same pull that I did before. But the downward slope into gambling addiction is very real. I know this personally. Someone in your life may be dealing with a serious spending addiction, whether it's gambling, whether it's shopping, whether it's gacha, whether it's casinos, whether it's online poker tables. If you do, get in touch with whatever intervention services you have handy. If they haven't driven themselves to the streets, they will soon. And if you, dear viewer, are dealing with thoughts of depression, self-harm, or even suicide due to the pull of gambling addiction, the number is on screen now for the Federal Mental Health Hotline and the Ohio Department of Behavioral Health's Intervention Hotline. There will be no negative judgment from them or from me on this video. I know what it's like. And I know that it may not seem like there's a solution to all of this. But in spite of this hole we've dug, we've still got a ladder to get out of this well. I reiterated before, but the answer is legislation, plain and simple. Do not decry regulations as restrictive because they are written in the blood of its victims. They're there for a reason. Ideally in the US, we get PASPA reinstated and destroy the framework that allowed Citizens United to happen. But while Republicans have control of literally everything and the old guard of the Democrats remains so feckless, we can look around the world for positive change. Beyond India, the long phase of the Stop Killing Games campaign is in effect. 97% of the 1.4 million signatures have been verified, and the team, including Ross Scott, have gone to Parliament, claiming unanimous nonpartisan support. A legislative decision now due in summer future live service games could be required to have an end-of-life plan before launching in one of the largest video game markets in the world. It's not like developers and publishers would just not release games there. There's still money on the table. There's also how South Korea passed legislation in 2024 requiring games to clearly list the odds of probabilistic content on their storefronts. It isn't meant to totally stop gacha, rather raise awareness of how low your chances really are. As of October 2025, most mobile game storefronts reportedly haven't complied, though that hasn't stopped EAFC 2026 shipping without the casino attached to it. I wouldn't be shocked if other major publishers followed that example. And not all of the US is standing idly by. The Office of Chris Mayes, Attorney General for the state of Arizona, has filed 20 counts of criminal charges against Kalshi for being an unlicensed bookie house and violating the state's ban on election wagering. Similarly, Governor Spencer Cox has spoken in defense of his legislature's bill to ban prediction markets in Utah. However, both will have to butt heads with Kalshi and Polymarket, who claim that only the federal government can regulate them. Back in video games, Attorney General Letitia James has filed charges against Valve for loot boxes in games like CSGO, but her office's decree is severely out of scope on the purported intent. Video games do not cause violence, as has been proven time and time and time again. But there's a lot that you can do too. First off, you can join groups like the Players Alliance. Fighting back against corporate greed is a very broad goal, but experienced organizers are at the helm, and they have the network and knowledge to help us all learn what we can do. Stop Killing Games is also starting non-governmental organizations in the European Union and the United States, so getting involved with them will help influence legislative change. Strength is in numbers after all. Secondly, learn the processes by which you communicate with your legislators. In the US, you have 1 federal House member and 2 senators. The switchboard phone number is on the screen now. You just have to say whose office you're trying to reach and leave a message. Representative Maxwell Frost, Democrat of Florida District 10, clarified exactly how this works.
But know that even if they don't answer and you leave a message, everything gets logged and categorized. So for instance, like I'll come in on a Monday and I'll get like a sheet that's like, all right, here's everything we've received, right? And it'll be like, you received 300 emails, 200 calls, and 100 this and that about the EA buyout.
Locally, you'll have different processes, but even for countries outside of this faltering empire, you have powers beyond your ballot box. Search for your reps, senators, members of parliament, whatever. Call their phones, show up at their offices, and grill them at town halls.
Thirdly, you have to define your goals. How do you want to accomplish change? How do you want to unfuck the games industry? I can tell you what I want. First off, total unionization of all developer positions across the entire gaming industry, closing the gap on wage disparity. Second, regulation on overtime and crunch on all parts of the software and hardware industries, especially those made for entertainment purposes. Third, a complete ban on probabilistic items, whether they're cosmetic or if they're consequential to gameplay. Fourth, revert IP ownership to the developers who prototype it. It would allow them to take their ideas to other studios to get them made if rejected. Fifth, you own your purchased software, and it's not just a license that can get revoked at any time, especially if you look at the developer and sneezed at them on a Tuesday. And sixth, integration into local, state, provincial, and national arts programs wherever they're available.
I understand that these are pretty lofty goals, and I hope that they'll be accomplished within my lifetime. Yes, I know GOG exists, and they guarantee ownership of your purchased games. But dear viewer, I ask you to consider the following.
What if life could be better? No, I'm serious. What if life just could be better? Because if we work together towards a common goal, then we can undo the worst of the damage that's been done, not just to the gaming industry, but the world as a whole. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to scour some thrift stores for more Beanie Babies.
If you made it this far, thanks for watching through to the end. This video had a ton of planning and work that went into it, with many hands aiding this video's production. Thank you to streamer Erica NekoArk, who provided the Black Ops 2 footage from bygone days. Additionally, I'd like to thank the devs behind Pro Philosopher 2 for giving me permission to use their music. And a big thank you to the mods of the Beanie Babies subreddit. I sent them a DM late at night, not expecting a reply until morning, and we had an insightful conversation that lasted until like 3 AM. They wanted to emphasize supply and demand, and gave me the following information.
The rarest Beanie Babies now are the exact same as they were in the 90s, the earliest ones. Why? Simple. First gens were manufactured in the single thousands, while fifth gens, well into the craze, were made in the tens of millions. That is a ridiculously large disparity. Therefore, the rarest beanie in that lot then and now would not be an all-caps Claude, its legs. Specifically, one with a first-generation swing tag and a first-generation tush tag. Those tags matter so much because they indicate rarity. So few 1-to-1 legs were produced, even compared to 4-to-3 all-caps Claudes. And in 2026, the only thing collectors care about is one thing: how few examples still exist, especially in gem mint condition. But even with the all-caps Claude, the reason it's valuable is because of the number produced.
This is some wonderful insight from a passionate moderator, a rare Reddit W. I'd also like to thank the Creators Hub team at Players Alliance for helping encouraging me along, especially Hub leads Diego, Jay, and Crumbcake. Jay and Crumb were even voice actors for parts of this script. All other voice actors who wish to be credited are on screen now. They deserve so much love considering what this video was about. Anyway, good gods, there were actually expenses to be paid in this one. If you want to help support me, my Patreon is in the description. It's only $1 a month. All of that helps motivate me and helps pay for higher production like this video was. And even if you can't send cash my way, even basic YouTube support helps. Drop this video a like, hit that subscribe button, and so on and so forth. Leave a comment if you like what you see or if you have your own story about anything in this video. Thanks for watching. And let's continue onward for a better world.